Welcome back, everyone. It is Eric from Rare Candy, and today going to be checking out the brand new Lost Abyss set. This thing just got revealed in full for Japan last night, so these cards are brand new. I have not actually gotten a chance to look over the set, so these are going to be largely my sort of raw, initial reactions to these cards today. And of course, these are going to be the final batch of cards that do wind up becoming part of our Lost Origins set. But if you guys are wondering why I'm coming at you today as sort of a faceless voice from beyond the void, I still am in the process of moving, and I don't really have a great recording space set up just yet. But making a video like this where I can just sort of turn on a microphone and set up my computer somewhere is still kind of doable for me, so I definitely still wanted to crank out this video. But just know that a lot of my normal uploads still won't resume back to normal just yet. So if I don't have a whole lot of uploads in the meantime, don't get alarmed. I have not abandoned you guys. I'm still just in the process of getting a new recording space set up. So with that being said, remember to smack that like button to help feed the YouTube algorithm, and let's jump in and check out these new cards from Lost Abyss. So the first interesting card we have looks like it's going to be Sunflora over here. Sunflora here, just 1 attack for 2 colorless energy, does 10, and you may discard up to 3 energy from your hand, and does 70 more for each card you discard in this way. So that's actually not bad for just 2 colorless energy. If you do discard all 3, you're going to be hitting, what's that, 210? Or I'm sorry, 220, yeah, once you factor in the 10 base damage here. So honestly, for just a little one-prize Pokemon like this, that's not bad. Of course, with a choice belt, you can get bumped up to 250, but you still are like a little bit shy of taking those big one-shots that you really want to. If we can get this bumped up to 280, suddenly Sunflora becomes a lot more interesting. Like, I guess we have Flapple. I guess there is a world where you could just play like Turfield and like a heavy Flapple count to get in that extra damage. There's still Inteleon, of course, but I think Flapple probably seems like probably the best partner here, because like everything is level ball searchable, everything's grass, so everything can use Turfield. I gotta say, I think this card isn't too bad. This is like the best Sunflora we've had in a while. Not that that says a lot, but yeah, this could be a fun little one prize deck to try out. I don't think it's too bad. So next up we have Shiftry. This is going to be one of the first cards we're looking at today that is making use of the return of the Lost Zone mechanic. Definitely, I think, a fan favorite sort of reoccurring mechanic that gets brought back usually once during each block of the TCG. But it's kind of like the discard pile, but you can't really get stuff back. So it's like a more permanent discard pile. But Shifter here, stage 2 Pokemon. First attack for a grass energy does 50, and you may have your opponent switch their active with one of their benched Pokemon. So not too great there, but the second attack definitely, I think, a little bit more interesting. For just 1 grass energy, does 210, and then you put this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into the Lost Zone. I mean, 1 energy for 210 is pretty good. Like, let's not get that misconstrued, but the issue I have with this card, 210, it's a good number if we were in a like basic Pokemon V dominated metagame, but we're just not. Pokemon V Star and Vmax are still the dominant Pokemon running around. And at that point, 210 is effectively no different than like 170 in terms of being like a decent like 2-shotting number. And at that point, we're also a stage 2 Pokemon, and this goes into the Lost Zone, so you can't even get Shiftry back with cards like Ordinary Rod if you wanted to. So like I said, I think the damage to energy ratio is fine, but yeah, Shiftry just has too many other things going against it, even though I want to like this card a lot. So we have Amoonguss, which was a card we did see get revealed in the past couple days as well. I do forget what this ability does, but I do remember it being kind of interesting. So whenever this card is discarded from your hand by the effect of your opponent's Pokemon's attacks abilities, or by the effect of your opponent's item card or supporter card, discard all cards from your opponent's hand. So yeah, that's definitely a very harsh penalty if your opponent does end up discarding this thing. But there's not really a whole lot of cards right now that are aiming to discard cards from your opponent's hand. I would venture to say you could play in 10 tournaments and never have a card get discarded from your hand by an attack or anything. So or at least right now, I mean, who knows, maybe in future sets we'll see more disruption stuff like that become popular, but yeah, right now this is just never going to activate, which is a bit of a bummer because it is a pretty strong effect in a vacuum. All right, next up we have Trevenant, and I do gotta say, Phantump, not a great card, but the artwork on this thing, pretty sick for just a Phantump, I gotta say. Love this thing. But Trevenant, this is another sort of card we got revealed ahead of time, but I do remember this ability being pretty good. So it says if this Pokemon is knocked out by damage from your opponent's Pokemon V's attack, your opponent doesn't take a prize card. That's pretty good for a format that's pretty much completely dominated by Pokemon V. Like, yeah, I know we have a couple of random one prize decks that kind of exist, like the Reg deck, though I think that has fallen off a little bit since Flying Pikachu ended up winning NIAC. But who knows, we just got the Pokemon Go set, so maybe the Solrock Lunatone deck might start popping up. But as a general rule of thumb, guys, your opponent's not going to be taking prizes most of the time here. And then it does have an attack, because we do need to attack with Trevenant if we are going to use this card. For 2 grass colors, just 150, and this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. So of course we pair this with Cherrim. I think that's going to be the obvious partner here. And one thing I do like about this is that if your opponent does try to gust around your Trevenant to take prizes, it actually resets this attack for you, which is really good, because the big issue is you can't use this attack back to back, which of course is going to be an issue. But unlike other sort of wall cards like Miltank or Decidueye, the damage output on Trevenant is actually pretty good. You are going to 2-shot any Pokemon V-Star running around, and you're only like a choice belt away from 2-shotting any Pokemon Vmax. The big issue still, even though if your opponent isn't taking prizes, they can still just run you out of resources. Like, you can still eventually just run out of attackers, so you just need to build your deck accordingly. Probably at least 2 copies of Ordinary Rod, maybe some scoop up nets to deny easy prizes on the bench. But, you know, I think we have maybe, you know, a potentially decent 1-prize deck here. All right, we have Magcargo up next. I'll probably talk about all of the Lost Zone cards, even though some of them aren't that great, I'm not going to lie. But just because it's a new mechanic, I'm sure you guys want to see everything that is going to be going on with them, because a lot of them do actually interact together too. But Magcargo here, not a particularly great card, but the second attack for 2 fire and a colorless does do 20. And you put all energy attached to this Pokemon into the Lost Zone, which is a very hefty cost, given that that means you can't re-accelerate the energy with something like Magma Basin or Raihan, and 220 also doesn't one-shot anything other than basic Pokemon V, which, like I already said, aren't really a very popular type of card running around right now. So overall, pretty weak. Not a big fan of this Magcargo here. Speaking of bad fire Pokemon, we have another one, and unfortunately this is going to be a Pokemon V at that. Delphox V's first attack for fire energy makes your opponent's active burned and confused. Not an awful attack for just a single fire energy early game attack like this. And then it does have one other attack for 2 fire and a colorless, does 120, and put 2 energy attached this Pokemon into the Lost Zone. But then the attack also does 120 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So this is a card that is honestly kind of close to being decent, but it's just shy. If this were 140 instead of 120, 2 of these attacks actually knocks out 2 Pokemon V-Star. But as it stands, you would have to use this attack 3 times, which does win you the game, I will point out. But this definitely seems like kind of an awkward attack to get up and running. Like Choice Belt or Telescopic Sight don't even really help you, if I'm being honest, because 150 plus 120 is only 270. That's not knocking out things like Palkia. But the Double Snipe is enticing. I'll probably still experiment with the card, but this doesn't strike me as one of the better new cards we're getting in this set. All right, next up we have Talonflame here. So Talonflame, you know, I don't think this card is too insane or anything, but this second attack is actually kind of okay. For just a fire energy, does 80 plus 80 more if your opponent's active has any damage counters on it. So of course that's easy to set up with something like a Galarian Zigzagoon if you want to. But you know, 160 for 1, not too bad, I gotta say, on a stage 2 like this. It is of course the stage 2, which is an issue. And even though you're not taking any giant one-shots, being fire does mean you can play Radiant Charizard in the late game to potentially get one of those big one-shots. So Talonflame, it's not too bad. I feel like this card's just inherently not strong enough to compete with maybe some of the top decks, but the damage to energy ratio is really solid. I think its attack is easy to get powered up, and you can pair it with some other good cards like Radiant Charizard. So who knows, maybe this could be a fun little rogue deck, but probably not going to win your next tournament. Alrighty, next up we do have Dewgong, and I will actually point out there is another card we need to bring up. And actually, we should probably check out that one before we get to Dewgong here. Let's see. Yeah, it's Finneon, oddly enough. But Finneon here has the Ocean Accompaniment ability. It says, as often as you like during your turn, you may attach a water energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon that has the Swim Freely attack. And I will point out, I actually did do a quick search to check the rest of the card pool. As far as I know, there's no other cards in the format that have this attack. Of course, this is just a Japanese translation, so this might actually translate to some sort of attack we have in English now. But as I understand, the only Swim Freely Pokemon are going to be in this set. So this is a card we do need to keep in mind for the Dewgong. So I just want to briefly highlight this guy. Yeah, let's go back to Dugong here. As you can see, Dugong does have the swim freely attack. 10, flip a coin of heads, prevent all effects of attacks. I don't know if that's going to include damage or not, but right now, if it's just effects like inflicting conditions, placing damage counters, that seems really bad. But Arctic return here, 2 colorless energy, 40. You shuffle any number of water energy from your Pokemon into your deck. This attack is 40 for each energy shuffled in this way. So even though this does have the swim freely attack, we don't have to use it. So with Finneon, we can dump a billion energy on Dugong and shuffle a bunch back into our deck every single turn. So let's see, if we want to knock out Palkia, we would need, what, 7 energy shuffled in every turn? That might be a little bit of an ask, I gotta say. But how would we do this? Of course, we have our Finneon. There is also, was it, I'm blanking on the name, Gossifleur? Or no, Eldegoss. Yeah, the Eldegoss that can search out energy. There's Nessa, Training Court. I don't know, we might be able to get there. Like, I guess between playing something like a Cynthia, Training Court, and using your Eldegoss, maybe you can get the 7 energy back to back. But, I mean, this kind of reminds me of Malamar. Malamar was a card I was not very kind to leading up to its release, and it's proven to be a pretty good one-prize archetype while having a very similar damage modifier like this. So, who knows? Maybe Dugong will be another sort of sleeper one-prize deck we'll have to consider. Let's see, we have the Kingdra line, and I will point out, Seadra does have the swim freely attack, though it's pretty irrelevant because we never actually want to evolve through Seadra if we're using Kingdra. But we have Kingdra here, another absolute A+ art. Is this the same artist that did the Phantom? I'm actually gonna check. Has the same vibe. It is, so yeah, I guess I'm just a fan of this artist in particular. I think it's the backgrounds. The backgrounds are like super detailed. But Kingdra here, Stage 2 Pokemon, has this ability. Once during your turn, you may choose either you or your opponent. That player shuffles their hand, puts out the bottom of their deck, then draws 4. Okay, so it's kind of like a Marnie effect for whichever player you decide to go with. Now, unfortunately, though, I don't think I like this because Kingdra's attack is awful. And if you're trying to use a Pokemon like this just for its ability, Thievul, the Dark Pokemon, I forget what set it came out back in. Maybe, was it Champion's Path, I want to say? It's an older set at this point, but it has a very similar ability. It's a stage 1. It works, I'm pretty sure, on both you and your opponent. So it's a source of disruption plus a source of draw, and it just kind of makes Kingdra kind of irrelevant, I gotta say. So not a big fan of this, even though the artwork is very, very nice. So next up, we do have Wailord. Wailord, of course, going to be a very chunky stage 1, clocking in 200 HP here. And its ability says this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from your opponent's Pokemon's attack. So effectively 230 is what your opponent needs to do to knock you out. So, you know, there are going to be some decks that can't one-shot Wailord. I mean, Arceus isn't going to be able to one-shot this. That's one of the most popular decks running around. That's great. It's only attack here for 3 water and a colorist is 120. Plus 120 more if this Pokemon has any special energy attached. Okay, you know, accelerating the energy isn't that difficult. We have Frostmoth, of course, or Palkia V Star at that. Getting a special energy is too hard. Like, we could play Capture Energy, which doesn't seem bad at all. Splash Energy is still in the format as well, so we could play that if you are worried about not being able to fulfill the water part of the attack cost, so that's also a thing. But yeah, if this was 250, I'd actually be pretty stoked, because at that point, Choice Belt helps you one-shot Pokemon V Star, and now, us only doing 270 with Choice Belt, we still need additional damage modifiers if we do want to one-shot those Pokemon V Star like Arceus and Palkia. We're just getting into the realm of needing far too many combo pieces to actually keep up with some of these decks. All right, next up we have Kieran Vmax. This was another sort of early reveal from the set. Kieran V, not too groundbreaking, but it does have the instant freeze attack, which I actually do like here. You attach a number of water energy from your hand to your Pokemon. So one reason I do like this attack over something like, I'm blanking on the name of it, but the attack on like Single Strike Urshifu is that you can attach these energies to your bench Pokemon, whereas cards like the Single Strike Urshifu or cards like Pikachu V, they accelerate energy to themselves, and you're running the risk of just getting knocked out on the next turn. So I do like this, being able to still maybe set up your next attacker if you think your Kieran V is going to go down. But of course, the VMAX definitely going to be the more enticing of the cards here. 330 HP, has this ability. Once during your turn, you may discard the top card of your deck. If it's a water energy, attach it to one of your Pokemon. So I do like this, some built-in energy acceleration, which makes us a little bit less reliant on cards like Melanie, even though I imagine we probably are still playing that alongside this Kieran. We just need something like a Rangaroo or Switching Cups, and we can manipulate our top deck and make sure it's going to be those basic water energies that we need to accelerate. But the attack here for Water, Water, Water does 120. You discard any number of water energy from this Pokemon, and does 50 more for each energy discard in this way. So, I mean, instantly, this is going to draw comparisons to Ice Rider, I think pretty rightfully so. There's definitely some pros and cons to Kieran over Ice Rider. One of the big pros is that there's no damage cap. Ice Rider is going to cap you out at 250. And so even though you can creep up above 300 to knock out Pokemon Vmax, I think if you're trying to knock out V Stars, Ice Rider is honestly still just better. Because if you discard 3 energy with Kieran, you're hitting 270 and you still need a choice belt to one-shot Pokemon like Palkia and Arceus. Whereas Ice Rider, the attack cost is 2 as opposed to 3, and you only need to discard 2 energy plus a choice belt to do basically the same thing. But like I said, of course, if you are thinking more about knocking out Pokemon VMAX, yeah, Kieran is definitely going to be a little bit better. But the issue with that is we are trending more and more away from Pokemon VMAX in favor of Pokemon V Star. And, you know, I like this Kieran card. In a vacuum, it's honestly pretty decent, but there's just not much of a reason to play it when Ice Rider does kind of the same thing, but more efficiently. And Palkia also gives up 2 prizes instead of 3. So yeah, I'm not too stoked on this one. All right, we have Cramer Ant up next, another one of these Lost Zone Pokemon. So it has the ability Lost Supply. If you have 4 cards or more in the Lost Zone, ignore all energy in this Pokemon's attack cost. And then it's only attack for 2 water and colors does 110, and the damage is not affected by weakness. So originally I was kind of harsh on this card. Like I remember I did a video, a week or 2 ago going over some of the first card reveals from the set, and one of them was this Cramer Ant. Wasn't too excited about this one, but one thing I do like about this though, this does give your potential Giratina VSTAR decks an easy answer to Miltank. Getting 4 cards in the Lost Zone is not going to be very difficult for these sort of Lost Zone decks. And this is just a really easy way at dealing with those decks that are playing things like Miltank. So for that reason, this could be a one of in your Giratina decks, but outside of that, probably not going to do a whole lot. All right, we have another Pokemon V. This is going to be a Rotom V here. Ability says once during your turn, you may draw 3. If you use this ability, your turn ends. So definitely some Intrepid Sword vibes with this thing, though of course you don't get the benefit of accelerating energy, but nevertheless, still not bad if you are trying to play some sort of Rotom deck. But it's only attack for 2 lightning energy, does 40, and you may put a number of Pokemon tools from your discard pile into the Lost Zone, and this attack does 40 more damage for each card you put in there in this way. This attack's not hard to power up. Like we have Flaffy, there's Raihan, there's ways to get this thing up and running. You do, in theory, have somewhat of an unlimited damage cap, but it's kind of awkward needing to get your tools into the discard pile first, and then into the Lost Zone with this attack. This just seems overall kind of clunky. I will point out there is a Rotom V Star, or VMAX? No, I think it's V Star. That's coming out as well. It's not actually in the set, but more than likely, of course, it will come out together in Lost Origin. I forget what that one does off the top of my head, but I think it kind of just builds on this same sort of effect. My knee-jerk reaction is that I don't love this. If you want to knock out a Pokemon V-Star, guys, you're going to need like 6, I think it is, Pokemon tools to put in there every single time. So you're going to need, what, like 12, 18 potential tool cards if you want to be able to take knockouts on Pokemon V-Stars. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be happening, guys. But, maybe the V-Star will fare better when it comes out. So we do have an interesting electric here. Though I don't know if I'm going to actually say it's good, but it does have a kind of cool ability. It says once during your turn, whenever you play this card from hand to evolve a Pokemon, you may flip a coin. If hedge, your opponent's active is now paralyzed. So this definitely gives me vibes of the old, I think it's the Cervine back from Fates Collide. Same sort of thing going on here. And, maybe we could see this pop up in like control decks or something like that. Since you can reuse this with Scoop Up Net, but it is a coin flip, so I'm not too sold on this, but it's kind of a cool ability. Figured I'd at least throw it out there, but unfortunately the Electros in the set isn't that great, and you really wouldn't want to evolve through Electric either at the end of the day. So I think if this ever does see any play at all, it'd probably be in some sort of control deck, I'd imagine. Alrighty guys, next we have Hypno, and this is a card that I want to love. I don't love it, but they at least made attempt they at least made an attempt to get my support here. For this first attack, for just a Psychic Energy, you search your deck for 2 Stage 1 Pokemon and put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. So, of course, I love evolution decks. I'm a big fan of them, trying to push that sort of thing. But yeah, if you're investing all of these resources into setting up Hypno, why not just use those to set up these Stage 1s that you want in play instead? It's going to take up less deck space, it's going to be more consistent, and at this point, like, you're not actually doing damage until turn 3 minimum. So yeah, Hypno seems pretty bad, but I like the energy that this card has. It's just not particularly great. So next up we have a new Sableye. I gotta say, I love the artwork on this thing. Very unique art style. Actually don't really recognize this artist. I don't know if they are new to the game, but I love the sort of textured look that this thing has. But it does have an attack here for a Psychic Energy. You may use this attack only if you have 10 cards or more in the Lost Zone and put 12 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in play in any way that you like. Now, 10 cards in the Lost Zone is a little bit hefty, but you know, as we get deeper and deeper in the set, you'll see we have actually quite a few ways at getting cards into the Lost Zone. More than likely, I will say you're probably not actually using this until like turn 3, if I'm being honest. So you might still need some other way at getting in chip damage in the early portions of the game. But in the mid game, this suddenly becomes a really strong spreader. Being able to put 12 damage counters anywhere is pretty good. We also have things like Horror Psychic Energy, Old Cemetery, Spike Myth, etc. There's plenty of ways at getting additional damage counters on the field. I kind of like this. You know, we have seen cards like Dragapult VMAX in the past do well, but Sableye, it's lovable, searchable, only takes a single Psychic Energy, so it's actually a pretty easy attacker to get up and running. There's part of me that does like this card, and I do want to try it out at some point, because I do think this attack does have some potential here. Okay, next up we have Bayonet. Now we're going to start getting to some of the cards that actually help get cards in the Lost Zone a little bit easier. Bayonet has this ability. Once during your turn, you may choose a supporter from your discard pile, reveal it, and put it into your hand. If you do, put this Pokemon in the Lost Zone and discard all non-Pokemon cards attached to this Pokemon. So this is one of these cards that's a little bit easier to help get stuff in the Lost Zone. And being able to grab a supporter is actually a pretty good effect. Yeah, I think that's an effect you naturally sort of want anyways. And being able to also help set up your Lost Zone Pokemon kind of helps you kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. I will say though, we have seen cards like this over the years, like these Stage 1s that have these sort of effects. One of the big ones that comes to mind to me just right off the bat is going to be the Delcatty back from Celestial Storm. That was a card that saw, you know, I don't want to say hype, but it had some attention when it was coming out. Very similar ability, never really caught on. I don't know if Bayonet's going to do the same either, but the fact that it does help Lost Zone Pokemon in particular might be the thing that tips it over the edge and might give it a little bit of a boost in playability. Okay, now getting into what I think is going to be one of the absolute best cards for all of these Lost Zone decks. That is going to be Comfey here. Comfey has this ability, allows you to, if you're in the active spot, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one of them into your hand, put the other into the Lost Zone. So it's kind of like the Amazing Rare Jirachi for your Lost Zone decks. And actually, in a way, it's a little bit better too, because in the case of Amazing Rare Jirachi, you're only digging 1 card deep. Like, you get to see 2, but the other one just remains there. This one allows you to dig twice as deep. And of course, in the process, you can pitch that extra card away into the Lost Zone and start setting up your Pokemon like Sableye, or of course, the new Giratina VSTAR that we're also going to be checking out here. And with cards like Air Balloon, Switch, Scoop Up Net, you can use 2 to 3 of these abilities every single turn if you want to. So I imagine this is probably going to be like a 4 of in pretty much any Lost Zone deck. I mean, you could play it in non-Lost Zone decks, because there's no reason you couldn't, but things like the Celebrations Mew might just be a little bit better, but it's another option to think about if nothing else. So next up we have a Mimikyu, which does pair kind of nicely with the Sableye we just looked at. For Psychic Colorless, it does 10 for each damage counter on all of your opponent's Pokemon, so this might be some sort of like late game sweeper attacker in some sort of theoretical Sableye deck, but this needs 2 energy, so I'm not too keen on it, but maybe an expanded, this might be a decent Pokemon for like Weezing decks or some sort of spread archetype there, because you can power this up with counter energy. Maybe this could be, this could maybe be like a cleanup attacker in Trevenant decks and expanded, because with Dimension Valley, you can attack for a single Psychic Energy, but at the same time, there's other cards like Tapu Lele, Espeon EX. Yeah, maybe an expanded, but standard doesn't seem too great for it right now. Alrighty, so we got Dragapult. Dragapult always gets really cool cards, so I'm very curious to see how this one is going to be. Let's see, for a single Psychic Energy, you may discard any number of your bench Dreepy up to the number of your... Wait, you may discard any number of your bench Dreepy up to the number of your opponent's Pokemon in play. For each Dreepy discard in this way, choose one of your opponent's Pokemon. This attack is 100 to each Pokemon chosen in this way. Don't apply weakness and resistance. So on paper, it looks like you can discard 3 Dreepy every turn and do 100 to 3 different Pokemon. For 1 energy, honestly, that's really not too bad, I gotta say. We have things like Horror Psychic Energy to push that damage up a little bit higher, Choice Belt, Telescopic Sight, Old Cemetery. So a lot of ways to double down on getting some extra damage into play, which definitely is good since 100 is kind of on the lower side. But if you're doing 100 spread to 3, you know, that is pretty decent. And if you actually want to do 100 to 4, we can actually still do that too, because if we evolve into Dragapult via Zoroark, we can discard 4 Dreepy, and that's kind of enticing, I gotta say, guys. But honestly, just discarding 3 is fine most of the time, because if you knock out 3 Pokemon V Star or 3 Pokemon V, you're gonna win the game either way. So discarding the 4th Dreepy doesn't do a whole lot most of the time anyways. I do wish this let you choose the same Pokemon more than once. That would be nice to help clean up damaged Pokemon a little bit easier. But you know, even though this is a stage 2 and kind of combo oriented and a little bit gimmicky at a glance, I actually do like this. I mean, if they're playing Manaphy, you're just screwed. You just kind of pack it up at that point anyways. But against decks that aren't playing Manaphy or like a ton of healing options, I actually think Dragapult is a little bit better than you might initially expect. So definitely one I'm going to be covering on the channel at some point. Really want to try this thing out. Very unique card design. I really love how creative this attack is. I would not mind seeing more cards designed sort of in this vein. Okay, so we have our very first Spectrier card. Up until now, all we've had is Shadow Rider, so very cool that Spectrier, I think that's how you pronounce this, is getting its first standalone card, which is cool. But yeah, first attack here for a Psychic Energy, choose 2 of your opponent's Pokemon and put 2 damage counters on each of them. And then for 2 Psychic Colors, says 120. This Pokemon can't use the attack during your next turn. So maybe this could be an anti-Miltank card for decks like Shadow Rider as an example. Or maybe even this first attack could be like, maybe this is your attacker you're using in the Sableye Lost Zone deck. Like you use a couple of Comfies to get some Pokemon in the Lost Zone and you end your turn with spreading a little bit of damage. That seems kind of okay to me. Doesn't seem like an incredible card by any means, but I wouldn't write it off completely just yet. Alrighty, next up we have Aerodactyl V Star, our very first V Star that we've checked out so far. Let's check out the V here. Let's see, Bite does 40 and then Rock Crush 120. Discard energy from your opponent's active. Not the worst thing in the world. This with a Choice Belt does knock out Arceus, so that's kind of cool. Well, if you have Choice Belt, that's 150, but with Double Turbo, you're not knocking out Arceus, so I take that back. Maybe this isn't that great. But we do have the V Star, so let's check this thing out. Alrighty, so 260 HP, fighting, 2 colors, 240. Put the top 3 cards of your deck in the Lost Zone. And then Ancient Stars, its V-Star power for colorless energy. As this Pokemon is in play, it gains an ability with the effect your opponent's Pokemon V in play, excluding Aerodactyl V Star, have no abilities. This is a very unique V-Star power. This is what I want to see from this mechanic. I got to give them some credit for this set because we're seeing a lot of, I think, very just uniquely designed cards that we don't normally see. Like we just saw the Dragapult. We have just the Lost Zone mechanic in general coming back, and now we have this. I really love the direction of some of the card design here. That being said, I'm not super sold on Aerodactyl in general because I think this attack is still a little bit below of where I want it to be, guys. You know, if we're hitting 240, even with a Choice Belt, we're going to be a little bit shy of a one-shot on Pokemon V Star, and with Double Turbo, that's only going to hurt things from there because with Double Turbo, we're at 220. Plus Choice Belt, that's going to put us up to 250. And this is a 3 energy attack cost, so more than likely we're using Double Turbo, plus probably Gutsy Pickaxe or Raihan to get this thing powered up. I really wish this first attack was better. The putting cards into your Lost Zone, I don't care too much about that. Well, let me actually backtrack a little bit, because I did forget we have a new item in this set that will power up our Lost Zone Pokemon a little bit easier, so there is a world where we are using that. So maybe we can still cap out at 270, but we're still a little bit shy of that magic 280 number, and that's my biggest issue with this card, I think. Especially since we're getting Giratina in the same set, it's kind of hard to make the argument to play Aerodactyl over that, even though I really do love this V-Star power. All right, so we have a pretty ridiculous Donphan here. For a fighting energy, does 110. If this Pokemon evolved this turn, this attack does nothing. Okay, so the entire reason you would ever want to play this is because with a Choice Belt, you one-shot Arceus, but if you evolve and try to knock out Arceus, you can't because of this stupid downside here. So I think it would have been much better to have the inverse where you can only use this attack if you evolved this turn, because otherwise this seems like unnecessarily like restrictive. All right, so we have another Lost Zone Pokemon. This is going to be Barbaracle. As long as this Pokemon is in play, your opponent puts any prizes they would take into the Lost Zone instead of putting those cards in their hand. I mean, this is a cool effect, but this definitely feels more like a win more sort of card. I forget all of the Lost Zone cards we've seen so far, but I don't really remember any that do things based on how many cards your opponent has in the Lost Zone. So this is more of just like a disruption sort of effect. And again, it's like a win more effect. You know, if we're carving out space in our deck for a stage 1, I mean, I'm definitely playing the Banette over this thing any day of the week. Or just using the space for a more general consistency card. So this seems pretty awful. Unless, again, maybe I'm forgetting something, unless there is a card that maybe does more damage or something, depending on how many cards your opponent has in the Lost Zone. But for the moment, not a big fan of this guy. Alrighty guys, next up we have Drapion V and V Star. These were revealed, I think, like a week ago now, so you guys might be up to date on these, but for those who aren't familiar with these, very interesting cards. This one in particular has big Galarian Zapdos V energy with it. But the ability, this Pokemon's attacks cost colorless less for each of your opponent's single, rapid, and fusion strike Pokemon in play. Coincidentally works out really well since it has an all colorless attack cost, and you're a dark Pokemon, so if you're playing against Mew VMAX, this attack is like basically always free. And it does 190 and does 60 to one of your Pokemon. This is basically just like a hard Mew counter, kind of in the way that Galarian Zapdos was like a hard Eternatus VMAX counter at the time. So if you are a deck that is struggling against Mew VMAX, there is definitely a world where you could play Drapion V, but I'm honestly not even sure if this completely fixes your Mew matchup. Like, unless you have a way at recycling Drapion on the next turn, I honestly don't know if this makes the matchup like an auto win, even though it seems like it might be at first glance. Because if your opponent takes the first 2 prize KO, you respond with Drapion, return KO them, they return KO Drapion. If you don't have another one ready to go, your opponent can still win. So I'm honestly not even convinced this is going to like turn Mew into an unplayable deck by any means. But if you are a deck that is struggling with your Mew matchup and is pretty good against most of the rest of the field, you know, Drapion definitely has to be a consideration just because of how easy this thing is to get up and running. And of course, it does have a V Star as well. So let's see. Dark Colorist does 250 minus 10 for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So that's a little bit of a bummer. I will say with the Choice Belt, if you're undamaged at least, you're going to be able to hit for 280, which is actually a really good number to hit for. But of course, that's assuming your opponent doesn't hit you with a Galarian Zigzagoon or a Quick Shooting. But even if your opponent does, the ability does sort of help you out with that a little bit. Your V-Star power says your opponent's active is now poisoned and paralyzed, and put 3 damage counters instead of 1 on that Pokemon during Pokemon checkup. So you actually technically don't even need Choice Belt to get a one-shot on Pokemon V-Star with this, but if you already have used this V-Star power, Choice Belt can help you for the rest of the game. Or if you have Choice Belt and your opponent has gotten a little bit of damage on Drapion, maybe this can pick up the slack and help do that extra damage that you need to get those big one-shots. So a Drapion V-Star, it's okay. I don't think this card is awful. But I don't remember the last Pokemon that had a minus attack like this that was like super competitive by any means. So yeah, I'm not stoked on it, but it's one to at least try out, I'll say that. All right, next up we have Crocodile. So Crocodile, this ability kind of confused me at first. I didn't really understand its wording, but I think I understand now. But it says whenever you play this Pokemon from hand to evolve one Pokemon, and when this Pokemon is your active and is knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, you may discard a random card from your opponent's hand. So I was really confused, like, what does this mean? You have to evolve and you have to get knocked out on the next turn to activate this? But no, it means that you actually get this effect both times. So whenever you evolve, you can discard a card, and then if they knock you out, afterwards you can also discard a card, which is kind of cool, I think. And it's not that hard to actually power this guy up with a Twin Energy and a Dark Patch or a Raihan. I mean, you have Crocodile up and running, ready to go. And yeah, I kind of like this. I I'm hesitant to say this is good because Stage 2 Pokemon just haven't been great. But there's a bunch of ways to double down on this. We have, was it Spirit Mask? That allows you to discard a card from your opponent's hand whenever they attack into you. So if they attack into you, you can actually theoretically discard 2 cards from their hand every time, which is kind of cool. And 160 is a nice sort of 2-shotting number as well. So I think there is some merit to messing around with this thing. The 30 damage that it does to itself is pretty irrelevant too, just because 160 HP is pretty pathetic. You're getting one shot no matter what, so this effectively doesn't matter. You one-shot me Vmax, that is a redeeming quality too. I kind of like Crocodile. This will definitely be a pet deck of mine that I do try out, but I'm not expecting big things, but I have a feeling you can have some fun on the ladder at least, and ruin some people's day with this. So a fun little stage 2 to try out probably, if nothing else. So next up we have Metagross, which was a card that did get revealed just like a day or two ago, and this is one of those cards I really want to like because this ability is so good. But well, let's get into it. Its ability says, once during your turn, if you drew this Pokemon from your deck at the beginning of your turn and your bench isn't full, before you put it into your hand, you may put it onto your bench, and if you do, draw 3 cards. So this is like a better version of the top entry ability we've seen on cards like Luxio, since this is on the final evolution, not the stage 1. And you get to draw 3 cards on top of that. That's pretty sick. Because of course, one of the big issues Stage 2 Pokemon face is just streaming them every single turn. And this gives you another way to potentially get a Metagross into play without needing something like a rare candy. You just need something like an Oranguru or switching cups to manipulate your top deck, and you're going to be good to go, assuming you don't get Marnied or Roxanne or something like that. But unfortunately, the attack is kind of where the card loses me for Metal Colorus. Easy attack cost to power up, but it does 100, and during your next turn, this Pokemon's Meteor Mash attack does 100 more damage before applying weakness and resistance. But the issue, of course, is we're a Stage 2 Pokemon that gets one-shot by most everything in the format. So this means we're never actually going to get that 100 damage buff on the next turn. So at that point, we're a Stage 2 doing 100 damage for 2 every turn. That's just, it's completely unacceptable, guys. I don't know who approved this card design because this ability is so good, but it's pretty worthless unless you're playing something like a Torterra or like the weird Orbeetle that wants Stage 2 Pokemon in play. So yeah, pretty big miss, I gotta say. All right, we have a new Galarian Stunfisk, a very annoying one at that. For just a Metal Energy, if your opponent has a Stadium in play, discard it. If you do, discard 2 energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Okay, so I gotta say, I do like this ability. We are in a format that is pretty stadium heavy. I think most decks out there do have a stadium of choice that they're playing. Like, obviously, you're not building a designated Galarian Stunfisk deck, but if you are a metal deck or maybe some sort of control deck, this definitely makes sense as a potential one of. I think this probably makes a little bit more sense in control decks just because you can sort of build your strategy around your opponent not being able to attack. Because a lot of times, even if you use this, let's say you're playing like a Zacian deck, just easy example, and you use this, your opponent can still just switch into another attacker and keep going. So your disruption might not be too impactful unless your whole deck is sort of built around the disruption. Not sure where it's going to fit in just yet, but I think control players might potentially like this one. All right, we have a very unexpected Pokemon V. We have Galarian Berserker V. Didn't know we were going to be getting this one, but let's see it. For Colorless Energy, you draw 3, and then its attack for Metal Colorless, 20 for each card in your hand. Okay. Now, unfortunately, though, I can't say I'm a huge fan of this because if you ever want to get into like one-shot territory, you're going to need around like 14, 13 cards in your hand. We have Cynthia's Ambition that can bump you all the way up to 8, which is pretty nice. I guess we could play like various draw 3 effects like copies of Avery and stuff. So, I mean, I guess that could get us there. Maybe Cincino or something like that. Or maybe like an Inteleon engine plus like scoop up nets. That could be a thing. But also, guys, we're a 200 HP basic Pokemon V. This thing's getting knocked out by everything. It feels like a card where you have to build your entire deck around it for it to be good. But it's not a card that is strong enough to be its own deck. So this feels pretty weak, I've got to say. Alrighty, up next we have the big daddy of the set himself. We have Giratina VSTAR. I imagine you guys are probably a little bit familiar with these at this point, but we definitely still need to go over them. And yet again, just absolutely crushing it with the artwork in the set. Love the Giratina V. Definitely, actually, I think better looking than the VSTAR at that. But yeah, 220 HP, no weakness, which is fantastic, of course, being a dragon Pokemon. but it's attack here for a colorless energy. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck, put 2 into your hand, and put the remaining cards into the Lost Zone. And then it does have Shred as well for Grass Psychic Colorless, does 160, and goes through any effects on your opponent's active. So things like Miltank won't really be an issue for you. So Giratina V, it's fine. Nothing too amazing, but let's take a look at the V-Star here. Obviously, we're going to get bumped up to 280 HP, so rivaling right up there with Palkia and Dialga and Arceus. But its first attack for the same attack cost as its pre-evolution, Grass Psychic Colorless does 280, and you put 2 energy attached to your Pokemon into the Lost Zone. I mean, so right out the gate, this attack is super good. Like 280 is such a great number to hit for. You don't even need Choice Belt to be able to take one-shots, which is amazing because that's going to free up 2 to 3 slots in your deck for potentially other cards. Now, you might potentially still want Choice Belt as a way of dealing with cards like Mew VMAX as an example, because you're not going to be able to one-shot Pokemon VMAX otherwise. And then the V-Star power for Grass Psychic. You may only use this attack if you have 10 or more cards in the Lost Zone. Your opponent's active is now knocked out. But honestly, guys, even though this V-Star power is an instant KO, which is great, most of the Pokemon we're going against, the first attack can just deal with on its own. And so one reason I do like this is because this gives Giratina a little bit of flexibility in terms of how you want to build this. Like, yeah, you can obviously play this alongside cards like Comfy and play these sort of like Lost Zone engine, if you will, to get this set up. But you can also just play cards like Gardenia's Vigor to power this thing up and just do 280 over and over. Or you can play this with Arceus V-Star. And actually, in the case of Arceus, one thing Arceus has kind of struggled with is that it's not really a great attacker in the late game, but this might be a good partner for the late game in your Arceus deck, since Arceus can accelerate these multiple weird energy types, and you can actually put a single double turbo on your Arceus into the Lost Zone with Lost Impact after you no longer need it. So yeah, Giratina seems like a pretty strong card, with a couple of potential different ways you could even build around it, which I think is another thing that does make this card pretty strong. Next up, we have Pidgeot V, which definitely strikes me as a little bit gimmicky, but the ability is kind of cool here. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is on your bench, you may use this ability and shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. Now, it is a little bit annoying you can't activate this in the active spot, because otherwise Pidgeot could act as a sort of pivot card to promote every time something gets knocked out. You could promote this and use this ability to retreat, but unfortunately that is not the case. And that definitely does limit the potential playability of this card. Like, there is a new supporter card that allows you to switch one of your basics with a basic in the discard pile. So there is a world, like if you're playing some sort of basic deck, it gets attacked, you can use the new supporter to switch into Pidgeot, then heal off all the damage by shuffling it into your deck. Like, that's a thing, but we're sort of getting into gimmicky territory at this point, guys. So it's like a cool ability, but I don't really see many like great uses for it right now. And the attack isn't too good either, like 80 plus 80 if you have a stadium, nothing too special. All right, next we have Porygon 2, guys, and this is going to be potentially our partner with the Rotom V and V-Star deck. But Porygon 2, of course, stage 1 Pokemon, just for a single colorless energy, does 20 for each Pokemon tool in both players' Lost Zones. Okay, so this definitely could give you a big late game option for the Rotom deck. You probably go through 2 Rotoms, then you close out the game with 2 Porygon 2, since they're probably hitting for a good bit of damage at that point. So, I mean, that's the idea, at least. The issue with this whole archetype still is the amount of Pokemon tools you have to play in your deck, needing a form of energy acceleration on your Rotom, and ways at getting a lot of Pokemon tools into your discard very quickly. So I'm still not convinced that whole archetype is going to be anything special, but it does hit Palkia for weakness, so that's a thing. And Porygon 2 does give you another sort of big late game option here. Probably going to be a fun deck, but not too much else I'm expecting. Alrighty guys, that's going to be all of the Pokemon, but we do have some trainer cards still to go over. The first one is going to be Toolbox here. So it says, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, reveal any number of Pokemon tool cards you find there, put them into your hand, shuffle the other cards back into your deck. So again, another one of these ways to potentially buff the theoretical Rotom deck. So it's kind of like Pokegear for tool cards, but one of the things I do like about this is that, unlike Pokegear, you can get any number of tools that you find there. And honestly, if you're playing the Rotom deck, you're probably playing like 16-ish tools already, so you have pretty good odds of hitting like multiple of these tools every time you play this toolbox card. So kind of makes sense there. I mean, beyond that though, I don't see a whole lot of reason to play this. Next up we have Mirror Gate, which is definitely going to be a very important card for these sort of Lost Zone cards we've been talking about up until this point. But you can only play this card if you have 7 cards or more in your Lost Zone. but then you search your deck for up to 2 basic energy of different types and attach them to your Pokemon in any way that you like and shuffle your deck. So obviously this is going to be the big way we're trying to power up our Giratina V-Stars, or this the big way they are pushing at least to make that happen. Use Comfy in the early game to toss Pokemon and cards into the Lost Zone. And in the mid game, this thing activates and your deck just sort of pops off. Kind of like in the way that the old Beast Ring used to work for Ultra Beast cards. You know, in the early game, you were kind of slow getting going, but once your Energy Accelerator came online, your deck just sort of explodes. And I imagine it's going to be the same way for these Lost Zone decks. And so, I mean, Giratina is going to be the big one, but we do need to remember we still can play this with other cards too. Like there is the Delphox V that we looked at as well. And maybe you can play some sort of Lost Zone engine along some sort of non-Lost Zone based attacker just to have access to Mirror Gate. That definitely seems like an option. But yeah, definitely going to be mainly for Giratina, as you can see too. I mean, the card itself, it's got the green and purple aura, so they knew what they were doing when they printed this card. But yeah, huge buff for those sorts of Giratina decks. Next up, we have Lost Sweeper, which is, I think, a really sick card, and one of the few Lost Zone cards we're seeing that I think could maybe even pop up in non-Lost Zone decks. But to play this card, you have to put a card in your hand into the Lost Zone, but then you choose either a Pokemon tool or a stadium card in play and put it into the Lost Zone. So this definitely evokes big vibes of Field Blower back from the Sun and Moon era, which of course was an amazing item card. And this is a little bit weaker because you do have to get rid of a resource to activate it, and it's only 1 card as opposed to 2. But if you are a deck that doesn't really have a stadium that you like, this is an easy card you can play, because this acts as kind of like a stadium or a tool scrapper depending on what you might want it for. So this seems like an automatic 1 to 2 of in your Giratina decks. This is actually going to be really good at removing big charms to make sure that those Arceus and Palkia decks aren't outside of that magic 280 range that you're hitting for with your deck. But yeah, overall really cool card. Very happy to see this one get printed. So we have Panic Mask, new Pokemon tool. It says prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by the attacks of your opponent's Pokemon with 40 HP or less remaining. Kind of reminds me of Blizzard Town, the stadium card we saw towards the end of the Sun and Moon era. Did see some play at Worlds 2019. Not much beyond that though. But yeah, if you do swing on your opponent, don't quite knock them out. A lot of times your opponent won't be able to attack back at you. So who knows, maybe this can be our go-to tool of choice for all these Pokemon we keep looking at that don't quite hit 280 that we really want. maybe we just play this instead and prevent our opponent from attacking back into us. Also does prevent things like Mad Party decks or like the Magikarp deck from Pokemon Go from attacking into you, though I don't know if you really need to tech for those decks. It's an interaction I want to throw out there at least. And this seems more gimmicky than anything else to me. Not a big fan of this card, but who knows, maybe some players out there will find a creative use for this. All right, getting into our supporter cards, the first one's going to be Colress's Experiment. I think probably one of the other new like backbones of the whole Lost Zone engine here. We get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put 3 into your hand, and put the remaining cards into your Lost Zone. So this is effectively like a draw 3, put 2 in the Lost Zone, which seems like a worse version of like Tierno and Howl and all of these like crappy like draw 3 rival supporter cards we see get printed over and over. But of course, this is actually an upside for decks like Giratina that do want to start getting stuff in the Lost Zone ASAP. Between cards like this and Comfy, it's going to be pretty easy, I think, to really get your deck up and running, and maybe even activate the Mirror Gate item or whatever it was called as early as turn 2. So yeah, this definitely seems like an auto include in these sort of Lost Zone decks. Next up, we're getting a new reprint and a pretty unenthusiastic one, pretty uninteresting one at that. It's gonna be Lady. It's a supporter that didn't really see any play the last time it got printed either, but you search your deck for up to 4 basic energy, reveal them, put them into your hand. Nothing special, guys. I mean, you can play this with cards like Cherum, Frostmoth, etc. if you really want to, but yeah, I think this card is overall pretty weak, and I don't really expect a whole lot from it this time it's getting printed either. Alrighty, next up we have Thornton. This is a new supporter that a lot of people have been talking about. It's not exactly a reprint, but it's a very close spiritual successor to the Ninja Boy card that came out back at the end of the XY era. But you choose a basic Pokemon in your discard pile, and you switch it with one of your basic Pokemon in play, but any cards attached, damage counter, special conditions, turns play, etc. do remain on the new Pokemon. So honestly guys, I could probably do a whole video on this card alone just because there's a ton of really cool interactions with this thing. You know, if you are playing some sort of toolbox attacker deck, you can use Thornton to, you know, switch into the right attacker that you might need at any given point. Or maybe you're playing Miltank. This allows you a way at just switching your attacker into a Miltank to just suddenly wall your opponent out of nowhere. I've also seen some people talk about maybe using this with the Cherrim from Battle Styles, because the big issue with Cherrim is that it only accelerates energy to non-rulebox Pokemon. But with Thornton, you can accelerate a bunch of energy to, you know, maybe a Cherubi, and then use Thornton to switch into some sort of multi-prize Pokemon as a kind of like a workaround of, you know, the limitations of Cherrim's ability. You can play this with the Reggie deck. So if you don't have the right Reggie in play, but you have another one in the discard, you can, you know, switch them around, get the right ones that you need to get your deck up and running. A lot of cool things we can do with this, guys. I'm very curious to see how this card is going to get put to use. You know, one issue I do see with it currently compared to Ninja Boy is that Ninja Boy had the benefit of having Versus Seeker in the format, which made Ninja Boy significantly easier to use since you could always just discard Ninja Boy and reuse it at any point with any of your 4 Versus Seekers. Thornton doesn't really have that same advantage going for it. The decks that probably most likely can most effectively use this are going to be decks that use the Inteleon engine to be able to search this out on the exact turns that they need it. Like, yeah, we do have Lumineon, that does help a little bit, but also with a lot of decks being V-Star decks, I think that also creates a weird situation where Thornton is kind of limited in the decks that it could see play with. But it's definitely a very cool card. I'm very excited to see what the community comes up with, and hopefully there are some cool creative uses that do come out of this thing being printed. So for our last supporter, we have Fantina. Looks like the lost of our... No, we do have another Lost Zone card to get to. But this says you can only play this card if you have 10 or more cards in the Lost Zone. But during your opponent's next turn, your Pokemon take 120 less damage from the attacks of your opponent's Pokemon V. I mean, that's nice, but this is another one of these Lost Zone cards that feels like a win more card, kind of like the Barbarical. Like, this doesn't really help our core strategy. Like with the Giratina deck, we want cards, if we're going to carve out space for something like this, I would rather just use that space for other cards that accelerate cards into the Lost Zone, because that's the big issue these decks face. A 120 reduction is huge. I don't want to get that misconstrued, but I think there's other effects we would rather prioritize if I'm just being honest. So it's a cool card, but you know, I'm not a big fan of this one, especially because of the hefty requirement that it does have too. And for our last of the Lost Zone cards, we have Lost City. It says whenever a Pokemon is knocked out, put it into the Lost Zone instead of discarding it, and all non-Pokemon cards attached are discarded. So kind of a cool stadium. I'm not really sold on it though, just because this is a very passive stadium and we are in a very stadium heavy format right now. So a lot of times you're just going to throw this down and it gets bumped on your opponent's next turn, and you don't really get any benefit out of it. But I definitely could see a world where you throw this down early game and then you just allow your Comfies to get knocked out as you're, you know, getting set up. And so not only is the ability on Comfy putting cards into the Lost Zone, but every time a Comfy gets knocked out, that also does the same thing effectively whenever you have this stadium in play. So that seems cool, but I just worry that this is going to be a dead card a lot of the time. And the final card we're going to look at is going to be a brand new special energy. This one's going to be Gift Energy. So it only provides 1 colorless energy, but if the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, draw until you have 7 cards in your hand. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of like a lucky egg built right into a special energy. That is definitely appealing. And there are actually a few cards that I did see throughout looking at this set that could like this. Like we have the Galarian Berserker V. That's a deck that is going to want a huge hand size at all times. This can help out with that. There's also the Dugong that wants to see a ton of cards every turn to accelerate energy. Has a colorless attack cost, so this might slot really nicely into there. So this seems like a kind of a cool energy. Like, yeah, your opponent can use Fan of Waves, but I wouldn't say special energy denial is like really popular right now anyways. I think more likely Temple of Sinnoh is a more likely annoyance that you have to deal with, but even still, most decks that are playing Temple are playing like a one of. So I think Gift Energy, it's a pretty cool card. I'd have to look through the card pool and see what else we have would like something like this, but definitely I would expect this to see some play at some point. But yeah, guys, that's going to do it for our look at Lost Abyss. A lot of cards we took a look at. But of course, the big new gimmick is going to be the whole Lost Zone mechanic. I do have to say, overall, I am happy with a lot of the cards that we saw. I think Mirage Gate and Lost Sweeper here in particular are some really cool cards for the mechanic. It is a little bit unfortunate that it appears that Giratina is really the only like super viable Lost Zone attacker initially, but I'm hoping they at least continue this loss of mechanic until the Scarlet and Violet sets come out. Like, I would imagine we're going to have at least one more set expanding on this mechanic a little bit more. But if nothing else, this is a good start to this whole mechanic being introduced. And I think Giratina VSTAR definitely going to be among one of my most anticipated cards from this set. But I definitely want to hear from you guys as well. Is Giratina the card you're most excited about? What do you think about the set overall? Are there any cards that also deserve a little bit of love? Let me know your full thoughts down below in the comment section. But of course, guys, if you did enjoy today's video, remember to smack that like button. And if you want to take that support to the next level, you can also become a patron at patreon.com/rarecandytcg or pick up some merch at rarecandytcg.com. Links to those will be down below in the description. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.